everybody. It's great to have you back. Welcome to Technology Wellness During a Pandemic. More wisdom from Beth Cantor. Thanks for joining us. My name is Martha Piskuskas. I am the Director of Arts Education at the Maine Arts Commission. And as you've noticed, we start every session with some kind of performance or arts experience. And so this session, we will be experiencing a listening video called Blessing of the Creatures, which is created by Vera Francis, Passamaquoddy woman, and theater artist Marty Pottinger. This Passamaquoddy drum song was reunited with the Passamaquoddy people through recordings that were made in 1890 on wax cylinders. It's held in reverence as one of the most ancient songs and offered here as a blessing of the creatures.
My name is Vera Francis. I'm Beskadamukad and Passamaquoddy. This blessing is showing us that we humans are powerful, that our drum can summon the mighty windbird is truly amazing. The creatures are listening to us, and in this time of unbearable ecological loss, the blessing reminds us of our impact, that we have the power to stop the destruction and bring life and nature back in balance. The Passamaquoddy drum song is from Beach Out from long ago. Nil Nulbeen, Naga Dudley Dictum and Bokulagan, Nil Dudley Wiktahan Way Susuk, Bamdenak, Naga Ona Beji Wujausanal, Jixidman, Bukulagan, Nulbeen, Naga Dudley Dictum and Bokulagan, BJ Mejiskak, Bedagig, Negamona, Jixidvanya Bokulagan. I sit down and I am beating my drum. Nagana, G, Ablo acid. I hook them, the wild animals, Naga, Jixidvan Bokulagan, calling them in. Afshnil Nobin, Naga, Bokulin, and along the mountain range, G plug, Bejion, even the winds listen to my drum. El Takwak, Beju. I sit down and I am beating the drum. Negmauna. Wujausen, the great windbird, stops and listen to the sound of my drum. I sit down and I am striking my drum. Even the Lumpek Winwuk, the underwater creatures, listen to my drum. The Utwuskunigas, the wood spirit, stops and he listens to my drum. I sit down and I beat my drum, and the great sea serpent, Abudamkan, listens to my drum. Lightnings, thunders, winds, bad weathers, they listen to the sound of my drum. Adwuskunigas, Ablamoacid, Lumpekawinwuk, Jeeplug, Negamna, Whirlwind, Lumpekawinwuk, the underwater creatures, Jeeplug, the great monster, they all stop and listen to the sound of my drum. And even the people came and listened to the sound of my drum. It sounded really good.
Wow, that was amazing. Much appreciation to Vera and Marty for making that happen. Okay, it's great to have these interludes. But now I'm welcoming back our keynote speaker, Beth Cantor. She is an author, a virtual facilitator, and trainer, and is internationally recognized as a thought leader in digital transformation, networks, and well-being in the workplace, with over 35 years of providing capacity building for nonprofits and foundations. COVID-19 has forced us to use technology all the time. Here we are. Whether to get our work done or socialize from a distance or stay close with family. During this session, we'll learn lots of practical techniques for mindfulness and a healthier relationship with technology. And as with previous presentations, we encourage you to add your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, not the chat box. And we'll have time at the end to have Beth respond. Okay, Beth, welcome back.
Great. Thank you so much for that great introduction. And I really appreciated the blessing in the video that preceded the session. I don't know, it gave me a sense of calm and very meaningful. So I'm very grateful for that. And let me boot up my slides. And so this session is about technology wellness. And I'm going to cover three things: why we need technology wellness, and share with you a simple assessment. Then I'm going to go through and give you some practical tips that you as an individual can do, and then share some tips for your team. So I want you to take a moment and just reflect for a second and think about how present are you in this meeting right now? On a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being, you know, I'm totally with you. This video conferencing Zoom session is like Zen meditation. That's 5. And 1 being, I have 10 other tabs open. There's another meeting to hop to right after this. I'm not prepared. My dog is barking. Something just slammed in the next room where my kid is, ... So where are you on this level of being present? You don't have to answer, there's no poll, but just think about where you are. And if you're a 5, awesome. But anywhere else along that scale, think about what you need to do for yourself to be present at this meeting. And that's always a good exercise to do before kind of jumping into an online meeting. And and to take a few breaths just to catch up. So it's a great also a way to start your meeting, to get everybody on the same page and kind of focused on the meeting at hand. So I want to talk a little bit about virtual fatigue and technology overload, which has been with us for a while, but it's becoming accelerated because of the pandemic and all the virtual work we're doing. You know, now that we have digital for everything, not even just work, but life. I mean, I had a funeral in our family over the holidays, and we had a Zoom funeral. But it's also in the workplace, all our meetings, all our collaboration. And this has brought this malaise called virtual or Zoom fatigue. And experts point to several reasons why we're feeling this loss of vitality, productivity, and well-being in our virtual workplaces. So I'm going to highlight why we're feeling this way. Always good to understand the why. So first of all, we have the multitasking temptation. You're only seeing from, you know, my headshot basically, and below the screen, you know, you can't see me, but maybe I could be on my phone. Maybe I could be like waving away a kid. That you saw maybe, or maybe I could be multitasking and doing something else. Although I don't do that during presentations. So we have this temptation to multitask, and bear in mind that multitasking isn't really a thing that you can do because your brain can only do one thing at a time. And so what your brain is doing is switching between these two different tasks. And that takes a lot of brain energy, and that leads to some of the exhaustion. And then, you know, sometimes people are multitasking, but they're getting themselves into trouble. sort of there's this whole new etiquette around, making sure you have the screen and the audio turned off if you do need to take a break. Another factor that's contributing to our Zoom fatigue is hyper self-awareness and self-complexity theories. Hyper self-awareness, we're not used to speaking and seeing, a video of ourselves, and that can be distracting because you're looking like, oh, my hair, or do I look fat? It's very distracting, although it's been really great that Zoom has created that new feature where you can hide your self view. And self-complexity theory, we're used to being different people in different contexts. I have my on the stage doing a keynote Beth Cantor. I have my professional workplace Beth Cantor, but I also have an identity as a mom and a wife. But because of working at home, all of that is kind of mixed up. And when we lose the ability to be complex beings, that's what can kind of ramp up our negative self-talk. So that's one aspect. We also have social anxiety because unless we're using a background, we're inviting strangers into our homes. And while we can kind of angle the camera and arrange our books in the background, there's still that, some level of social anxiety. There's also something called nonverbal overload. And that happens because, again, especially with large groups, and we're all on camera during a meeting, we're not used to staring into people's eyes or being this close with people we're not really close with. And that's leading to some overload. As also the fact that there is some latency in the video. There with Zoom, there's like a smidget delay between me talking and you receiving the information. And that makes it seem, especially in an interactive meeting, that people are being unfriendly or that they're displeased with your message. And of course, our negative headset can kick in and start saying, oh, they don't like it, or, oh, did I not explain this clearly? So that all leads to this kind of Zoom fatigue. We also, in a conference room, we have physical cues. We can see each other. We can see what we're wearing. We can see things on the pictures on the walls. We can smell coffee. We can see donuts on the table if there's donuts. But we have this loss of physical cues. And so we're deprived of this sensory experience of being with each other in the room. And I don't know about you, but I think I'm going to have a big transition with my wardrobe going back when we can actually be together in the room, which I hope is sooner into 2021 versus later. There are some other things that have been around with the use of technology that I also want to mention that are contributed to this malaise of technology stress and technology fatigue. First is sitting is the new smoking. And we're probably sitting more at our desk than we would if we were in the office, where we'd at least walk down the hall to go to a meeting, or maybe go out into the community to go to a meeting. But now we're sitting at our desks for long periods. And when you do that for longer than 60 minutes, it's not really healthy for our bodies. It can create organ damage, heart disease, colon cancer. There's muscle degeneration. There's leg disorders, poor circulation. It could, hurt your back and your shoulders. And then there's problems at the top. There's brain fog. So, really the goal of sitting should be singular, to give our bodies a break from moving. And I'm going to talk about some tips for that. Also, there's some physical ailments that come. One of them is called text neck, and that's if we're like bent over using our mobile phone. Our heads weigh like 20 pounds, and we as humans were meant to be standing up, not like bent over like this, and that's going to cause some pains in your neck. That's been called text neck. Also, brain fog from sitting. So this is from University of Illinois, and it's from a study where they actually scanned people's brains first after sitting quietly for 20 minutes, and that's the one on the left. And then the one on the right is after a 20-minute brisk walk. And if you notice, the synapses are all lit up on the one on the right. So that's what the impact of a 20-minute or an exercise snack, as I was mentioning before, can have on your brain. The other thing that can also get us into trouble if our bedtime, is doom surfing or doom scrolling. And this is, it's almost like addiction. And especially when so many bad things are happening, we just want to be scrolling through the news. And especially on social media platforms, the way that the interface is designed, it's called the infinite scroll. It's designed to get us sucked in, and we just can't stop. And that doom scrolling, seeing, bad headline after bad headline, that's having a negative impact on our mental health, as I've mentioned before. There's also, if we're doing this right before bed, that's going to affect your ability to sleep. Or even if you just get a work email right before bed, that's not a good thing. And then lastly, the screen itself, the light is bad because light is measured in kelvins, and screens like your iPhone or your iPad, those blue light, and that's up around 7,000 kelvins, which is more than direct sunlight. And what's happening is when you're looking at your phone with this bright light at bedtime, that's going in through your eyes and it's going into your brain, and it's delaying the onset of melatonin, which is the hormone that you need that causes drowsiness, and it's delaying your sleep, and it can disrupt your sleep, and it can prevent you from getting that good 6 to 8 hours of sleep that we really need for our body to repair and to keep our immune system really operating at its best ever capacity. And especially now, we really need that. So these are some science-based reasons why we may be feeling ill effects from the use of technology during the pandemic and other crises. So the first step is self-awareness. So what I'm going to do is put a little technology wellness quiz up on the screen. And I would like you to read the questions. And I'm going to read them off in a moment. And I want you to just, get a pen out or something and just jot down, keep count of how many of these questions that you answer yes to. Then I want you to add up your yeses to get your score. And you could get a top score of 10. And this is, do you typically have more than 2 virtual meetings scheduled back to back without taking a break? Yes or no? Do you check your phone before you go to bed or right when you wake up? Yes or no? Do you have problems recalling information and resort to searching on Google? Yes or no? Do you feel you often have a hard time paying attention or focusing on a single task? Yes or no? Do you feel frustration at the amount of online information you need to process or online meetings you go to every day? Yes or no? Do you frequently or constantly check your email, Slack, Teams, Facebook, or other online sites? Yes or no? Do you sometimes check your mobile phone for messages while in the bathroom? Yes or no? Bonus question, have you ever lost a phone due to water damage? Yes or no? Do you feel self-conscious seeing your image on the screen while participating in a Zoom call? Yes or no? Do you sit at your computer for longer than 30 minutes at a time without getting up or doing any stretching? Do you ever check your mobile phone while walking outside? Yes or no? So what I'm going to do is we want to know your score, and we're going to boot up a poll, and we want to know whether, so if we can launch that poll, great. So, did you score 0 to 3? You've had good habits. What's your secret? Some good, if you're 4 to 6, some good and some bad habits. You need to work on some of those bad habits. And if you're 7 to 10, you need to change your habits now, and you really need to pay attention to the rest of the session. All right, so we'll give people a chance to answer that, and we will see where we are with this group. it's very interesting to me. I've seen, I've been doing this poll for a number of years, and I have seen the results change since the pandemic. So I want to see if that's going to be the same thing here. So let's just see what our, okay, so we have some of you have some good habits. That's great. Keep that up. Please try to share those in the chat. And then we're split here between needing to change or some good and bad habits. Okay, so let's share some tips. And as I'm going through these tips, you might want to think about, you know, if you're in that 4 to 10 range, think about if there's one of these new habits that you'd like to adopt as we go. So the first thing is standing more. This is a great time for a standing desk. And it doesn't have to be expensive. This is an example from a colleague who works at a nonprofit. And she created a standing desk out of a music stand. She's, you know, she works in the arts, and a carton. You have to be careful that it's ergonomically correct, that it's the right height. And also, if you're switching to a standing desk from sitting, you want to do it gradually. Standing too much, too soon, all at once can also put some strain on your body. And again, remember that the point of sitting should be to take a break. One thing that I had to do was to kind of figure out what types of activities I could like to do standing and what kinds of things I really need to sit. I found like when I'm writing deep things, I like to sit. And I found like things like email or, checklists and things that were quick, I did standing. So, and that's more like trial and error. You'll figure out like what works for standing. The next thing is stretching at your desk. And this is really important to have a stretch routine. I wear a Fitbit right here, and it pings me every 55 minutes and it reminds me to stretch. And I have a whole routine of office stretches, beginning with some wrist rolls, which are good to do up and back. And again, if you have mobility issues on any types of these stretches, modify them. Or even if you just need to do neck rolls, or even if it's just like standing up and sitting down, just so that you're taking a break every so often. And one of my favorite, one of the ways that I got started doing this was I'd say about 20 years ago. I injured myself with something called RSI, which is repetitive strain injury, which is from too much hands on the keyboard for hours. And when I went to see the doctor on whether or not I needed surgery, I didn't. I got physical therapy. He taught me the importance of stretching, because if you can stretch, and I said, oh, I don't have enough time to do this. And he said, well, do you want to stretch or do you want to lose the use of your hands? So what I did is I set a timer at my desk, and every hour on the hour, I would do what I call the Avita stretch. And the Avita stretches, don't cry for me, Argentina, every time the bell went off. And I would do 3 of those. And that would sort of work out the kinks. Here's a pro tip I'm going to give you. And this is about having energy breaks. If any of you are doing meetings that are longer than an hour, and I hope you're not, but sometimes we have to, that you do plan a break after an hour. I like to call them energizers. And you want to have, maybe do some music, and everyone take a break by moving around from their, get offline, go take a break. I have one team that I work with that they make us point our cameras, put our phones on our keyboards and point the camera down, and then absolutely go out and take a walk. And there's many different ways to do little energizers. And my favorite one is the dance party. And basically and you can do this on Zoom, and it's not as much fun if we're all doing it without being on camera, but it's a good one for Zoom meeting. And so what you do is you tell everybody to create a dance floor. And in fact, and then this is your dancer, right? And then you put on some dance music. I think I'm going to do that now. And you can dance on the screen. And it makes it fun. People laugh. Again, if there are not mobility issues, you want to be as inclusive, and just have a fun break. The next is taking a stroll at lunch, and this can really replenish your energy for the afternoon. Again, this is this idea of exercise snacking. If you're using your computer keyboard as your lunch tray, stop. You get a lunch break, take your lunch break, even if it's a 10-minute walk around the block. If you have a dog, they'll remind you. And maybe in this day of COVID, we need to, in this day of COVID, maybe we need to have a dog walking machine like that. The other tip is to really go offline for your focused work. And now Stephen King, who's there in Maine, he has a quote that says, "Write with the door closed, rewrite with the door open." So whenever you have really focused work, you want to make sure that you're not online. And a few ways to kind of shut the door. I have to do this. I have a sign, I'm on a session, please don't interrupt. I put boundaries around my physical space because I'm co-working and homeschooling. And I also turn my phone off into airplane mode to make sure that I'm not disrupted with distractions and notifications when I'm trying to do focused work. There's lots of apps that you can use to reduce your screen addiction and for all sorts of wellness activities. One of my favorite is the Screen Time Genie. It's actually not a phone app, it's a web page, and it comes from BJ Fogg, who wrote Tiny Habits. I introduced you to that in the keynote. And he's also the head of the Stanford Behavior Science Lab. And you go on the site and you can put up what your goals are around reducing your digital distractions, and it will give you some tips. The Forest app, which is available for iPhone and Android, works like a timer. And what it does is that you metaphorically plant a tree, and it shows a tree, and you say, I'm not going to touch my phone for 10 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever. And you put it away, and it kind of gamifies it. If you pick up and touch your phone, it kills the tree. If you're able not to touch the phone, the app developer makes a donation to forest conservation. So how cool is that? So those are some tips. I'm going to stop for a moment to see if there's any questions. Those are some things you can do yourself. I'm also going to talk next about things you can do with your team. But maybe there are some things you're already doing to reduce to increase your technology wellness and to reduce your TechnoStress. So let's see if there's any questions in the chat, Martha.
No. You're good to go.
Okay, great. All right. So what I'm going to do is move on to technology wellness tips for your team. And then we'll, again, open it up for Q&A. Because again, it's one thing to do these things for yourself, but we work with other people, and other people's technology habits create kind of the techno culture for our team. And we can create a toxic one, or we can take one or create one that reminds us to take care of ourselves in terms of our technology use and to practice tech wellness. So the first thing, and I had mentioned this morning, I will mention this again, is to establish the rules of engagement for your team. Okay, and this could be a great little exercise that you do with your team and talk about, what are your office hours? What's the best way to reach you for non-urgent items? Let people know what your response time is. And if you are taking vacation, not that we can go anywhere, but maybe you are doing a staycation, or you're just getting some time off and you're not working, you may be at home. to let people know about that. And this really lowers our anxiety about missing something important or being, viewed as a slacker because we're not able to respond right in the moment. So it's a really good exercise to really discuss with your team what the expectations are. And once you know what they are, it's also really good to communicate them, especially, maybe in your email footer, that when you're going to be checking email, if your team is using something like Slack or Teams or other online collaboration software, you're able to customize your status alert to let people know, when you're ready or when you're in a meeting or when it's do not disturb or I'm offline for a day. And then people know not to bug you. Another thing that can cause a lot of kind of bottlenecks is scheduling. I call it scheduling Tetris. Now, internally, if you have a shared calendar, that's great. But, a lot of times we are scheduling meetings with people outside our organizations. So tools like Calendarly and Acuity can help by making scheduling more self-service rather than mediated through email, and it cuts down the number of emails. Again, as I mentioned, we may be taking some downtime, and it's really important to have an out of office message when you are doing a staycation. Sometimes we can make this humorous kind of out of office messages. And that's if you're taking a whole day off. I also want to remind, individually, you can also take a quick 3-minute vacation from your email by just taking some deep breaths and imagining a beautiful place. Like I think I would imagine the coast of Maine or maybe some of the mountains of Maine. That's another way to just take a mini vacation. But if you are going to take a vacation day, it's important to communicate it. And it's important not to then go in and check and answer your email. It's important to stay offline. Put your computer away, maybe turn notifications off. Don't actually use your staycation day to do work. If you're managing someone else, it's really important to value the deliverables and not seat time or screen time. So don't expect your employees to be 24/7. There's flexibility that does come with remote work. It's really about like getting the job done versus answering my question right in the moment. So if you're not clear what your people that are reporting to you are producing, maybe you want to agree on some standards for updates. Maybe this is a weekly bulleted list on a Google document. Maybe it's a daily note, or maybe it's links to work artifacts. And maybe you need to add more decision points with people. Deadlines always drive action. So maybe you need some more interim meetings around getting stuff done. And of course, it's always good to ask if people, are having difficulty concentrating or if they need more help from you as the manager. Really important to do this. So it's really not about how much time you're sitting in your seat in front of the screen. It's really about like getting the work done and communicating around that. Fewer meetings, okay, more asynchronous work, okay? So does your Google Calendar or your Outlook calendar look like that? That's bad, okay? One tip, and I've been doing this, is, and it's a settings in your calendar, is that instead of having meetings start and end on the hour, you can have them end 10 minutes early, or you can have them start 15 minutes, run a quarter on the quarter hour. So always also think when you're scheduling an hour meeting, do you need the full hour, or is this better to be done in 20 minutes or 30 minutes if it's just a check-in? Because if you're just scheduling hour meetings by default, because that's what your default is on your calendar, you're going to use up your time, your work time really quickly. And you want to, again, put boundaries around your time. Like that, and you can do that with your calendar. Another thing you'll notice on this calendar is that it's not just about meetings, but also deliverables, and personal time is also scheduled. Sometimes you can also write in for yourself time to schedule breaks, time to take a walk, time to take an exercise snack. So your calendar isn't just really about meetings, it's also a really good time management tool. Now, Asynchronous, I've noticed a big shift since the beginning of the pandemic, where the types of meetings that we have face-to-face, we could do a lot of reporting and a lot of discussion. But with so many meetings that we have to do, that does get exhausting. So we're doing a lot of work now where we do a lot of pre-work and post-work. It's almost like designing a college class where, what's the homework to come into this meeting so we can just discuss the thing we need to discuss, and that can take less time than discussing everything, because some of the things we can catch up on our own time. Maybe it's doing a pre-read, maybe it's looking at a document and providing some feedback or comments on that we then sync at a meeting that's shorter. So I've noticed now with a number of my projects that where the team used to have an hour meeting face to face, we do some asynchronous work, and then we do a half-hour sync meeting to make decisions. Another type of meeting we've been doing is called the silent meeting. I know it sounds a little weird, but it actually works really well, is that we'll give some time at the beginning of the meeting to have a minute of quiet meditation to get everybody settled. And then if there's a pre-read for 5 minutes that people should do before the meeting, before we discuss it. And we've found that this really makes meetings more efficient, and that means there's less meeting time scheduled, and that means that there's less Zoom exhaustion. So those are a few tips around technology use and your team. And I do have a number of handouts that I've included about this, but I do want to open it up for any questions or discussion. Please feel free. I'm going to stop the desk share.
Hi, Beth, how are you?
Good.
It looks like you're hanging in there today. You've had a really busy day with us. So it looks like we do have one question. And it says, I'm the social media person for my business, and I hate getting emails from multiple platforms. I had an auto response on Facebook telling people to contact me in a different way. Any thoughts on how to handle emails from multiple platforms?
Okay, so emails, I'm assuming that's direct message on the platform itself versus an actual email. And so I know on Facebook, your Facebook page has the ability to set up a messenger chat bot, and people have the ability to message your page on LinkedIn and direct messages, on Twitter and so forth. So a couple of things. So on Facebook, you have the ability to set up a chat bot that has an autoresponder. The simplest thing you could do is have the autoresponder on Facebook say, we answer messages during regular business hours. If this is an emergency, give them the emergency information. Because I know some nonprofits work with kind of emergency work that it can't wait till normal business hours. But if it's a question for normal business hours, the auto respond on Messenger on your Facebook page is a real gift. And that's a simple thing to do. The next level up is that you can also activate a chat bot, a messenger bot. On Facebook, this takes a little bit more work because you have to kind of anticipate the types of questions that people might ask. So if you're monitoring kind of the frequently asked questions, you can send people, if you're looking on where to buy tickets or make a donation or get XYZ information, you can include the link to your website, and then also with a message that we answer during normal business hours.
Very good.
You make sure you include that messaging on, like for Twitter, you can even shut off the DMs and say, or even say on your profile, we answer DMs during normal business hours.
Very good. Very good. Great idea. The next question is from Caroline at Opera Maine is, do you have recommendations for helping volunteer committee chair people understand the need to limit meeting times for the sake of staff without seeming ungrateful for their generous giving of time?
Oh, that's a really good one, because I noticed one board that I'm on is some people kind of are looking at the interaction as the replacement for social time, because we don't have that because we're isolated. And so the meetings tend to be really long. This might be something you might want to have a side conversation with your board chair, and maybe explain some of the stress that staff is undergoing because of the virtual situation, and maybe talk about some methods to keep meetings on track and to keep them to time. One thing that we have done, and I noticed my son's college class, he has a club that he's on. I noticed they do this too, is that they have like dedicated social time either at the start or the end of the meeting, and the rest is the business meeting. And it's well designed. It's an agenda, this amount of time for this topic, make it, things that go in advance. And then with him, they have time afterwards, and it's optional for people to stay on and have social time. So that's one way that you could do it. I know it's hard. It's hard, and you can't do it probably suddenly. Maybe you introduce some of these things gradually.
Very good. I'm looking to see, that's everybody that had something in the Q&A box, but I encourage anybody that's got any quick last minute questions, anything that Beth hasn't had a chance to touch upon. Beth, what would be sort of the two top recommendations summary out of what you said? I know that's hard to do because there's so many, but if you could just kind of give the two things you want people to walk away with.
If I would put it in 2 words, I would say boundaries with
good.
yourself and your technology, and boundaries with other people and your communal use of technology. So boundaries are really important. And I hate to say it like this, but just do it because you end up with, I've overdone it. I'm totally guilty about all of these things, believe me. And I've worked hard to get myself from an 11 down to a 3 or 4. But like, you don't even notice that you have a digital hangover, and it just takes its toll on your mental health and on your physical health. So do yourself and do your organization's mission a favor that pull away. Really try to take in at least one of these tips and just do it.
Good.
Start today.
Very good.
Say that I think one thing that I notice is the shift is we used to sit together and figure things out, and it's too much for our technology overload. We can't do that anymore. Not just about wanting the social interaction. It's just, headache comes in. And so all of those tips that you were saying about having pre-meetings, schedule yourself to do some of that work so that then you can do it asynchronously. I need to do more of that you said as well, but I just feel like it's a whole mind shift of how to do the work using technology smartly.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I've also started to use, and I don't like getting too much into the tools, but it triggered me when you said problem solving together, that we don't have that. And I have this shifted to something called Jamboard, and it's part of the Google Docs now. It's a very simple whiteboard and sticky note board. And I have found that somebody shares desktop and somebody does it, but having a brainstorm or having ideas up in real time and then sorting them, and then having people like vote on them, even with a virtual sticky note, has been really helpful. So, and there are some really simple tools out there that aren't complex or expensive, and I've used this with a volunteer group of people who aren't very technology savvy. I was surprised. I did it as a little test. Okay, let me see if they can use it, and they took right to it. So maybe start to experiment with some of these simple tools. Jamboard. So it's I think if you just Google Jamboard, it'll take you to it, and it's part of the Google Docs suite. It's really wonderful.
Yeah, I've seen that before.
I
also want to, I'm still kind of scrolling through to see if there's any questions. I don't see any new ones that have come up, but I also want to remind people that we have posted links for Beth's book, and also some, I believe, of your articles or blogs on there as well. So there's information there. Feel free to go back through, or you can email any one of us at the Maine Arts Commission staff. We'd be happy to do that. Beth, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you
Well, there's www.bethcantor.org takes you to my website. You can also find my social presences. I use Twitter a lot, LinkedIn. I'm not really big on Facebook. I limit my Facebook for a lot of reasons, email. So you can always connect with me that way. I don't answer right away, but I eventually get to it.
That's okay. I'm sure you're using a lot of the distancing tools that you're talking about today.
Trying.
Staying healthy yourself.
Yes.
I also want to remind people that at 3 o'clock we have creating welcoming, inclusive art spaces moderated by Marty Pottinger. Sorry about that. That includes a separate link, which I've put down here in the chat room. But thank you so much to Beth Cantor for spending a large part of the day with us today and the amazing information and tools that you've given us. It's actually a relief to me to hear somebody that spent so much time that can just sort of offer up things that I don't have to go searching for myself. So thank you. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Stay healthy, everybody. Bye.